All right, good morning, everyone. Oh, come on, guys. There we go. I know, lots of good networking going on. So I'm Robert Bobroff. I am publisher of the St. Louis Business Journal, and on behalf of the Business Journal and our partner/sponsor for today's program, St. Louis Development Corporation, we want to welcome you to today's program. So many great people in the audience today, but I wanted to take a moment to mention a very special attendee. Mayor Tashara Jones is joining us today. Thank you for joining us. So today will serve as an introduction to SLDC's Economic Justice Action Plan, and we've a great to do just that. This is a very important conversation for our city and our region. So you know how today's program will unfold. We'll kick things off with a fireside chat with Neil Richardson for today's program, and then we'll bring up our wonderful panel and have a thought-provoking discussion. So why don't we go ahead and get things kicked off with that fireside chat. I'm going to invite Neil Richardson to the stage, and while he is making his way up, I'll tell you a little bit about him. Neil is President and CEO of the St. Louis Development Corporation. He took the lead role at SLDC in June of 2021. Prior to joining SLDC, Richardson spent 10 years at U.S. Bank in an ascending series of responsibilities, from negotiating and underwriting complex tax credit investments to leading financial education strategy as director of the Business Impact Group at U.S. Bank. Richardson led a team focused on closing economic gaps and creating equitable access to capital for women, people of color, and those in disinvested communities. He also co-founded and was formerly president of Dream Builders for Equity, a nonprofit that hires minority contractors and students to rehabilitate derelict North City properties. That experience made Richardson uniquely qualified to take the reins at SLDC and bring the organization's Economic Justice Action Plan to fruition. Please join me in welcoming Neil Richardson. And I can't have a fireside chat if I'm way over here, so yeah, I'm going to join you.
Are you going to bring the fire too? Where's the fire?
Exactly. Not very fireside. So I guess I can't get too close.
Yeah, that's
whatever. So let's get started by introducing the concept of economic justice. So can you explain what it is, what the expected outcomes of the action plan are, and why it's important for St. Louis and why it's important now?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I want to thank everyone for being here today, waking up early in the morning to 7:30, 8 a.m. to be here, and also paying to be in attendance. So I really appreciate everyone for coming today, as this is a very important and critical moment for the city of St. Louis as we think about the economic future of our city. And so as we think about economic justice is really defined as those who have historically been marginalized, who have the areas that have been disinvested legally in some cases, and in some cases illegally. They are now the focus of our intention when it comes to investment, when it comes to deploying resources to ensure they have the opportunity to achieve their greatest economic potential. Over the past few years, there's been a focus on equity. Many people talk about equity in a way of meeting people where they are. And while that's important, in order to truly transform this city, we must also recognize the historical barriers and the historical policies that have put us in this position. Brian Stevenson stated that the opposite of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice. So it's critical to understand that by just making an investment in a community, by being able to have a relationship in community, that doesn't mean that that will change the outcomes of one's life. We must get to the root causes of these issues. And that requires us to look at the harm that was created, the trauma that has been realized, and the policies that have created the current condition of our city. There have been policies such as redlining, racial covenants, And even to this day, we still have appraisal biases that continue to depress and continue to disproportionately impact Black communities every day. So if we're going to make a change, if we're going to make a difference, if we're going to grow our economy in a way that it works for everyone, we must recognize those historical barriers and those historical policies and be just as intentional with new policies, with new investment strategies, and creating a new ecosystem that creates opportunity for everyone. And that's what the Economic Justice Action Plan is really built on. It's built on closing the wealth gap. It's built on providing and improving health and educational outcomes. That's how we grow the tax base, and that's how we ultimately grow the population in the city of St. Louis. We talk about if you build it, they will come. But how about we invest and build up the people so they can stay, so they can reinvest? So the strategy and the action plan, while it is focused historically on economic development, it is human-centered, taking a human-centered approach to economic and community development and understanding where those people are today. And we've created a strategy that is focused on achieving just that. We have 3 core pillars within that strategy: economic empowerment, equitable and inclusive development, and neighborhood transformation. And while that sounds great, those are just words on paper. But in order to really make change, we need to have action behind that. And that's what we've been building over the first year under the mayor's leadership and under SLDC, being able to implement new policies and new change in order to create that growth. As we talk about economic empowerment, we must focus on our women, small minority-owned businesses to help them enter, grow, and scale in their respective industries. What does that look like? That looks like an economic empowerment center in communities that have historically have not had access to banks or financial institutions, have not had access to technical assistance support, that have not had access to the opportunities for them to have connections to jobs, to contracts, in order for them to be successful in a more equitable manner. The second core piece around economic empowerment is workforce development, ensuring that our youth, our unemployed and underemployed, have the necessary skills to enter into industries in which they can not only create a thriving and living wage job, but they can create a thriving wage job in which they can build a family, they can contribute back to our community, and ultimately help grow our economy long term. And a third strategy within economic empowerment is educational justice. We understand that the longer someone lives in poverty, the harder it is for them to come out of it. So we must be able to have those interventions up front in partnership with the school districts, in partnership with all of our workforce development programs, to ensure that as we're talking about educational justice, that as we are building up those anchor institutions, the school systems within these communities to provide the resources to educate and support the future of our city. The second pillar, equitable and inclusive development, is focused on incentive reform, commercial and community-driven development, as well as ensuring environmental justice is at the center of what we do. There has been a lot of conversations around tax incentives and tax reform, that we're taking away something from a community or we're giving it to another. The mayor says this all the time. This isn't an either-or plan. This isn't an either-or approach. This is both and. How do we invest into the Central Corridor and downtown, but incentivize development in a way that actually promotes and drives equitable growth? Partnering with organizations and companies such as Procter & Gamble, being able to negotiate deals where they are looking to expand their facility, invest $180 million in North St. Louis City, But the critical component of that, as we talk about a justice lens, is for whom are they creating those jobs for? And how do we support that pipeline for our residents and our unemployed and our youth to actually get access to those job opportunities? So as a return on the investment that the city is making in the form of a tax incentive to create hundreds of new jobs, we are also creating opportunities for our schools, our school-age students, our alumni of SLPS to now have access to new opportunity. And Procter & Gamble has stepped up to provide a workforce training program in partnership with the schools. So that is what radical collaboration, inclusive growth looks like in action. We also are focused on investing in North St. Louis to build up our commercial corridors. Being able to focus on not just how do we build the lived environment, but how do we support those businesses that have been there historically, that need access to capital, that need technical assistance. But as I talked about earlier, we can't just invest dollars in and hope for a different outcome. We also must walk with these businesses, build trust, and build relationships with them. So as they get access to this capital, they also are having the financial wherewithal and building the organizational and administrative capacity that once this money is gone, they now have a different relationships with financial institutions. They now have different capabilities in which they're able to access capital from a traditional market. And then our third key pillar is equitable and inclusive development. St. Louis Development Corporation, we have LRA, the Land Reutilization Authority, that is the St. Louis Land Bank. It is the oldest land bank in the country. It has the highest inventory of any land bank in the country. And unfortunately, we have seen LRA as a liability rather than an opportunity. And so we've taken a moment to step back and really evaluate and assess the inventory that we have within LRA, work with neighborhood-based organizations, CDCs, and communities to understand how do we create a plan to repurpose that property that has been vacant for decades into assets that work for the community and contribute towards our tax base. So this is just year one, right, of the action plan. But this is what happens when we have a clear vision and a clear direction on where we want to go. And now we're setting the stage around radical collaboration with the public, the private, and philanthropic community to leverage the historical investment and commitment that Mayor Jones has made towards economic justice of $246 million. With the with the $150 million of that directed and committed to North St. Louis City. And while that sounds great, $246 million, we hit the lottery, right? $246 million in the scheme of economic development is just a drop, not even a drop, it's a sprinkle in the bucket. For context, NGA is building a close to $2 billion facility in North St. Louis City. So while this money is unprecedented and it's important that we leverage it and direct it in a strategic way to catalyze equitable growth, it will take everyone in this room, everyone in this city, to align on these priorities and invest in the growth of our community and our environment.
You can feel the passion he has, right? So, Neil, when most of us think about economic development, it's traditionally been attracting big companies to an area, to a region. Can you explain how the focus on economic justice is different and how it fits into the overall economic development plan for the city?
Yes.
Good. Thank goodness.
Yes. Well, traditionally when people see and hear economic development, they think the big projects, the NGAs, the convention center, the Procter & Gambles of the world, the big fish gaming that comes with business retention, expansion, and attraction. However, communities are not built on just those projects. And those projects are not successful without having strong communities. So they have to work together. They have to be intertwined. And so as we're looking at how we leverage the tools that we have from an economic development standpoint, how do we embed economic justice into everything that we do? Last week, there was a huge announcement around the investment of new market tax credits that have been awarded to several community development entities and financial institutions in the St. Louis region to the tune of over $200 million. And while that's important, I love new market tax credits. I understand how they can create and catalyze growth and change and really create jobs in the neighborhood. But if we're using our economic development tools towards economic justice, we also must evaluate these projects and investments in a different manner. We must look not at only the number of jobs they create, but the quality of the jobs that are created, the type of products that are being produced by the companies that we're investing in, and who benefits from that. And so we at SLDC, for the first time in our history, and for the first time in the city of St. Louis, we are establishing a $15 million new market tax credit housing development fund to work with nonprofit partners to rebuild our qualified census tracts. Our qualified census tract, as defined by HUD, is an area that's at 60% of the area median income or have a poverty rate of 25% or more. And in the city of St. Louis, over 52.9% of our geography is in a qualified census tract. So we have to leverage these dollars and these tools to drive growth and change forward. And when I talk about for whom benefits from these investments, we are targeting these dollars on building homes that will create ownership for those families who want to live in North City at 80% AMI or below and stimulate a market where we can have market rate housing as well as affordable home ownership. Now you have mixed income, mixed use neighborhoods, because as commercial and retail developers and businesses are looking at communities, the first thing they ask about is the disposable income of a neighborhood. So when you think about a grocery store, when you think about the healthcare facility, when you think about a Target, those are how those decisions are being made. And that's why we must invest strategically in the people in those communities to ensure that they have the resources to grow in order for our city to be redeveloped and rebuilt. So we're flipping economic development on its head, where we're focused on the bottom up rather than the top down.
So this is really a complete realignment of priorities for SLDC, and I'm sure that that type of monumental change, you anticipate having some challenges along the road. And you said you're going into year 2. So can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you've faced, some of the challenges that you've overcome, since introducing the action plan?
Yeah, I would say that first and foremost, as you go on this journey of justice, it's not easy. It's not sexy all the time. And you are working with individuals and families and residents and businesses that have experienced trauma, that have experienced deferred promises. And so when we come into these conversations, we must recognize that trauma. We must recognize where they are and the things that they've experienced. So again, it's not us just having to be able to give this money out, as people think we can just do. It's us building relationships and understanding where people are and helping them understand this is the process that it will take in order to rebuild your business, rebuild your house, rebuild your community, and rebuild this city. And it took us generations and decades to get here. And it will take intentional investment over the next decade in order to see some progress and some change. And so it's challenging because many of us care so much. We want to see the change happen immediately. We want to help every business and every person that have experienced this harm and repair it immediately, but we also must recognize that there are limited resources in this moment, and we cannot do it alone. So it requires us to bring forth other private and philanthropic dollars and investors to the table to address these needs. We have to call it cavalry in this moment. And we have to all recognize that this is not just a moral imperative, but a financial, economic imperative, a public safety imperative, a health imperative for our city. And so in this moment in time, as we talk about the challenges, I'm comfortable having a conversation with a financial institution around why they need to be investing in this way and coming through these financial strategies. But when I have a small business that has been hanging on as long as they can to make it through, the challenge is being able to ensure that they're able to see the long-term benefit of these investments. And that requires us not only to provide the financial resources, but the human resources to make that possible. And so at SLDC, one of the first things I was focused on is how do we reposition our human resources to be able to address this need and implement this plan. And so what we did was restructure our organization to align with our 3 core pillars. Ms. Stacy Fowler is now head of our economic empowerment pillar. The senior vice president of our real estate development, Rob Orr, is leading our equitable and inclusive development pillar. And then our senior vice president of community and neighborhood transformation, Lance Knuckles, is leading our neighborhood transformation pillar. And they will be responsible every day of making sure that we reach those goals, that every action within that plan is realized. And they will be graded, they will be judged, they will be, focused on that, because so will myself, so will the mayor, on what progress were you able to make. And so that's why in this moment, again, we talk about the financial resources, but we also must have the human resources to implement this change. And through the mayor's support and through her vision and her framework, not only is SLDC at the table to make this happen, but also our other city development agencies, such as our Community Development Administration, Affordable Housing Commission, St. Louis Agency for Training and Employment, as well as our Department of Health and Human Services, because it will require, again, all of us working together in order to achieve this change. And so in this moment, as we talk about what's the most challenging thing, is just getting everybody on one focused vision of economic justice, because when we do that, we will realize our true potential as a city.
I think we can all see why Neil's in the position he's in, right? One more round of applause for Neil. And now we're going to go ahead and, in the fireside chat, we're going to introduce our panel and get that part of the program rolling. So I think Neil is going to move over to my left so that we can have the panelists front and center. Panelists, as I call your name, if you can make your way to the stage as I'm telling this wonderful crowd all these great things about you while I read a bio. So first up, if you would please welcome Daphne Moore. And guys, I don't think we have assigned seats. We're very low-key here, so sit wherever you like. Daphne is the Senior Vice President and Chief Administrative Officer for the St. Louis Development Corporation. She previously served as a Chief Opportunity Zone Officer for SLDC and worked to position the city as a leader in utilizing Opportunity Zone investments to support equitable economic development with neighborhood-scaled projects that have a positive impact on residents of Opportunity Zone communities. Moore is an Associate Fellow in Urban Governance for New Cities, a global nonprofit focused on the well-being of cities. Please welcome one more time, Ms. Daphne Moore. Next up, we have David Noble. David is the St. Louis Market President and Director of Community Economic Development for Midland States Bank. As Market President, he provides oversight to the team's commercial loan portfolio, establishes and maintains ongoing relationships, and supports cross-functional relationships within Midland that promotes customer relationship development, including business connections to consumer and wealth management product sets. As Director of Community Economic Development, he is responsible for developing, implementing, and administering all aspects of the bank's corporate and regional community economic development plan and CRA and fair lending strategies. Once again, please welcome David Noble. Next up, we have Pastor Andre Alexander. In 2011, Pastor Andre led a launch team to organize the Tabernacle, a church plant started in 2012, where he currently serves as the lead pastor with a passion to develop and inspire all to reach their full potential in Christ. In addition to his pastoral responsibilities, he has served on the board of St. Martin's Child Development Center from 2012 to 2014 as treasurer and on the Mizzou Urban Influencers Advisory Council. Andre was the lead organizer of Tabernacle Community Development Corporation, which began in July 2014 and has been its president since the inception of the organization. Once again, please welcome Pastor Andre. And I'll try not to be offended that nobody wanted to sit next to me until the very last panelist. You are, Pastor Andre, I'm sorry. No, so last but certainly not least, please welcome Mary Ellen Wiederwohl. Mary Ellen is the president and CEO of Accelerator for America, a national nonprofit that works with mayors and economic development leaders to develop solutions to economic insecurity and share them with the cities across the country. She has 2.5 decades of experience in business, civic leadership, and public affairs. She was the founding leader of Louisville Forward, the city's economic and community development arm. Please, once again, welcome Mary Ellen. So thank you, panel, for joining us today. Mary Ellen, we'll start with you.
And I'm happy to sit next to you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. You bring a broad national perspective to this type of work. What do you see that is working in other cities, and what makes St. Louis economic justice efforts different?
Well, it's a real pleasure to be with you today, and from just up the road in Louisville, a very similar city to St. Louis in many ways. And thank you, Mayor, for your leadership and for joining us this morning and supporting Neil and Daphne and their team at SLDC. At Accelerator, we work with cities across the country, so we get this bird's eye view into how things are going out there. And, you know, cities are bellwethers for America, so when you get to sit with city leaders every day and see what's going on, you can really see the future of this country, and it's encouraging. You know, we've had an election this week where a lot of it was about the state of our democracy, and I think we're all feeling a little better about democracy, but we also know that we've got to work together going forward. And cities are where this activity is happening. The vast majority of our population lives in cities, and unfortunately, not all of the populations of our cities are living well. And that's what we steer into at Accelerator, is working on these issues in cities around economic insecurity, and how do you create greater economic mobility. And unfortunately, most every city, through a lot of the discriminatory practices that Neil referenced in his comments, have a pocket of their community. And usually it's an entire piece of geography. Here it's North City. My hometown, it's the West End. You can go to just about any city in the country and you'll find a South Side, a West End, or a North City. And that is not a sustainable economic platform for a city going forward. And so when we look at what's going on in cities today, we have a historic opportunity because of the resources available through the American Rescue Plan, the infrastructure law, now the Inflation Reduction Act, and we've had a generally good economy. We've come out of the pandemic. We've learned a lot. We also learned the pandemic didn't impact everybody equally. And so we have a moment to maximize here. And the cities who are going to do that best are the cities who have a plan. And that's what's really special about what's going on here in St. Louis. With the commitment from the mayor of these incredible funds from American Rescue Plan and other local dollars, and leadership here at SLDC to create this action plan, you have what I think is a top-tier plan and opportunity for your city going forward. It's the comprehensive nature of it, it's the leadership behind it, it's the commitment of funding to it, and this moment that we're in. And so the question here community-wide is, how can you take what's already been committed and how can you get more people and more funding behind it going forward? I love what Neil says about radical collaboration. That's really where we are. If we're going to maximize this moment in St. Louis, it's about radical collaboration, all coming together in what is a relatively short period of time to deploy and get this moving. We really have to do this now. We cannot lose this moment in America.
Daphne, this one's for you. I understand there have been other plans and strategies around economic justice and equitable development in the past. What is different about this action plan?
I think this plan is different, one, because we have a true champion in our mayor, who from day one said that we're going to include all of St. Louis, that no one will be left behind on her watch. And so first you need that champion to actually get it done. Then you need the money. So she also said, not only am I going to make a commitment, we're actually going to put capital in this action plan to see it through. And then the next step, I think, that is very important about this plan is that it's people-focused and community-focused first. And so with that, we are working with our CDCs, our nonprofits, and other organizations on a global and national level to actually implement this plan. And then the third thing is that this plan allows everyone in the community to see themselves. There is something where a foundation, a corporation, or an everyday citizen can see themselves within this plan, and there's an action that we all can take to make sure that this plan is implemented successfully, and I think that's what makes it different.
Pastor Andre, you've already put a lot of the initiatives we're talking about this morning into practice at the Hub. I'm sure you can share some lessons learned from your foray into development in the heart of North City. Can you tell us about that experience?
I'll give you the Clip Notes version. Sum it up, that's why I don't have hair. Never do a project like that in the middle of a pandemic. That's the lesson. Seriously, we saw long ago the need for, St. Louis has great talent and gifting in nonprofits and in the business world, but we are very poor at working together. So our model had always been, what does it look like for us to put a space where everybody can play in the sandbox together, and that's what the Hub is. And what we learned is you have to go with who's willing to step up first. A lot of times what has frozen us here is we're waiting for their key, what we believe is the key person or the key entity to step up first. And then if they don't, things get tabled. We said we're going to go with who is willing to work with us first, which brings good synergy, because if you're in it at a foundational level, people have the same commitment. The challenge with that is, as it grows, those who felt they were left behind step up and get into conversations. I won't name names, but from a healthcare perspective, we had that happen. It was kind of like, we were living in the world of Zoom, and they said, well, you didn't come to us. And we said, we came to you, and you closed the door. I'm a very direct person, so if you ask me, I'll tell you. Now, you sure you want the answer? And then I'll give you the answer. And so the person said, we really want to know. And we said, well, you closed the door in our face. So we kept moving. And what we've discovered now, a year later, and maxing out 15,000 square feet and having 10 different partners in one space playing well together, everything from music and arts to coding to healthcare to speech therapy services and legal and all of that, is that there are people here who are willing to step up and invest. Hub was done pretty much donation and small loan. There was no, city subsidy. We couldn't go to a traditional bank because depressed real estate. So we learned what it was like to have to make every dollar count. But it allows now for people to see a model where you have public, private, and philanthropy coming together, because most people, I am with this say from the philanthropy side, if we make this investment, is it worth it? And we say if you believe in people, then it's absolutely worth it. And then the next question is, well, how is this sustainable? Well, it's sustainable because we're sustaining people. If we don't sustain people, our communities and neighborhoods will never be sustainable. And so, with that, some people begrudgingly gave and others willfully gave. And here we are on the other side of it with a story to tell.
David, this one's for you. Access to capital and leveraging private funds to extend the impact of the federal public dollar seems to be the crux of the Economic Justice Action Plan. David, what role will banks and financial institutions play, and are they ready to shift the way lending has been traditionally handled?
Interesting, loaded question. First, let me make a disclaimer. The statements that I make today are solely my opinion, not necessarily the opinion of Midland States Bank. Now that we got that out of the way, Mayor, Neil, SLDC team, thank you for the opportunity to be part of this discussion. So let's take a walk for a minute and think about financial institutions. So while we are similar in what we do, we sell money, we charge fees for managing money. When you get granular, our business models differ a lot based off of what we're capable of doing. You have leadership. That's a factor. You have talent, you have culture, and then you have capacity. For financial institutions, I think one of the things that we've looked at in the past, or that has been looked at in the past, is where's the easiest path for me to make money? And in these distressed communities that have been disinvested in for multiple generations, that's not a money-making opportunity if you look at it on the surface level. So from a financial institution standpoint, one of the things that we have to consider is what kind of toolbox can we create that we can leverage in this effort? Do we talk at the community, or do we assess the community, look at the needs, look at the wants, look at the different actors in the ecosystem, design and craft a strategy that allows us to engage at the right level, consider products along Reg B, special purpose credit products that we can literally design and kind of sidestep some of the compliance issues that hinder us in doing some things, designing products for specific purposes. And that allows us to take this toolbox that we can bring to bear in a market. One of the important things that I think we need to understand as well, too, is that this is a team effort, that no one financial institution can do it alone. So as we talk about financial institutions, what are we talking about? Institutions, or are we talking about vehicles? So you have banks, you have credit unions, you have CDFIs, community development financial institutions, you have community/economic development revolving loan funds. So you have this toolbox of community economic development finance that you need to be able to leverage and hold. Well, I think for the city, one thing that we looked at with the economic justice and for real, what I looked at is I've been waiting on this moment. You hear that we're in a season, but I haven't seen communities focused on investing in both people and place for, let's say, a social, community, and economic and environmental development. Bottom line, you've had these hodgepodge efforts, shotgun approaches, not a laser focus. So we're in a season now where the city has designed this plan. When we looked at it, I literally went through it doing my homework at about 12 o'clock at night, and literally was checking off boxes. I said, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. And then the next step was reaching out to Neil and Daphne and saying, look, we want to come alongside you. in the economic justice plan. We feel like we've designed a toolbox that we can leverage to assist you. We are here to help.
So this question is actually for the entire panel, whoever would like to respond, and I hope that y'all do. You can hear a lot of passion in our audience today, right? I think this audience has come close to setting the record for rounds of applause during a panel discussion, but I think that's because when an attendee shows up to a conversation like this, they want to make a difference. They care about our region and they want to get involved. How can our audience engage with either you or your organizations or this plan? You know, give us some ideas on how the audience can make a difference.
I'd like to start with those. I want to pick up on where David left off. And so it's really easy to look at something like this and think about philanthropy and human services and subsidy. And we need that. You know, we need more of that. And in fact, thinking as a community about how you do philanthropy and thinking about where your philanthropic funds are going and having a real self-examination. You have a wonderful list of amenities here, particularly in the arts and children's activities. You are a mecca for people with kids, and so everybody's driving here throughout the Midwest. But thinking about that whole portfolio and how can some of those funds be shifted or new funds, grow the pie, come to this work. But picking up on where David is, this is an opportunity for investment. This is actually an opportunity for banks, CDFIs, loan funds, high net wealth individuals, anybody who wants to get involved, to actually invest in community. This isn't just about writing a check and doing something good. This is about an opportunity to create a market in North City. That's really what SLDC is doing here, is they're creating a market where all of this strategic disinvestment and discrimination erase the market. That's why you don't see private investment going into those places today. But with these investments, you will see the opportunity for others to follow. And I just love David's comments, because this is one of the things that's really special about this plan, is it brings the private investment and private opportunity into the table, into the room and at the table in a way that frankly makes it easy. One of the ways we got to know working with St. Louis was during the Opportunity Zone work that Daphne coordinated on. And we did Opportunity Zone prospectuses across the country at Accelerator. And the whole idea is to make it easy or easier for private investment to come into some of these places where they haven't been before, because the data says don't go there, or historic discrimination and racial issues say don't go there. This plan blows the doors off that and says, come to North City, come to St. Louis.
I would add to that as well, being, wearing multiple hats, and one of them being leading a nonprofit that's a CDC, is that I call it the A's: adopt, awareness, and advocacy, and then action. And what that simply means is there are enough people with enough resources in St. Louis to find something, an area within our city, to then advocate for, bring awareness to, bring action, and invest in. And that's what we have found work for us, is to say, hey, here's a plan, here's a way to execute, here's a way that you can see your investment. Sit here for the long term. And when people sit in a place for the long term, it allows them to see sustainability and to grow relationships. So I would challenge anybody in here to, if you've been on the fence or kind of thinking about it, and I'm not just toting our organization, if there's an organization you're already connected to who is doing this work in North City, be intentional and stay there. Don't do a one-off and walk away. Stay there, and you can see over time those things evolve, see your investments grow.
I think the other thing is that we all individually have to look at ourselves and say, what can we do? And not ever get frustrated in the moment. I've been in St. Louis for 20 years, and I started off as an urban planner, and I've moved around the region. And I never grew tired of helping our community. And I think that this is a long game, and that we have to be committed to improving people's lives, but also saying, okay, what is my purpose in this action plan? What is my purpose in this organization that I work for or that I volunteer for? And I think that as long as we stay focused on community, we're not always going to agree, but we have a pathway forward. And as long as we're working toward this action plan, I think that we could be a model for the world, not just the country, but the world, because we have every type of issue within our region. But we also have every opportunity to create change that is lasting for all community and for all people. And we have to bring the human side of it back, because sometimes we move away and say that's not my problem. But it's our problem as a region if we want to be competitive. The cities that are succeeding, they are focused on the human side and making sure people know why they should come to their city. And we have a great city, but sometimes we don't see it in the way that we should.
So the cherry on top, it's interesting that you hear recurring themes from Neil's presentation, from us speaking. So we know that we're in a season right now, we're in a crossroads, and that what got us here, what we've done that's got us here, isn't necessarily going to take us to where we want to go. So one, we have to be willing to accept change and disruptive change, because we need to disrupt institutions and systems and design new systems that allow us to achieve the outcomes that we want. One of the things that I've seen as a challenge is an unwillingness to collaborate, consolidate, and partner. Everybody wants to be on an island and plant their own flag. That's not going to work. We need to be thoughtful and intentional in what we do, and then understand that this is going to take a collective effort for the St. Louis region to realize its potential, and it starts with the city of St. Louis. So understanding that we need to be acceptable and receptive to change is one thing that we need to do first. And we do need to look at ourselves. We do need to look at the institutions that we work in and understand how can we effectuate change and create outcomes. It's great to be up here on a panel and talk. I guarantee you that when we leave, we're working to get things done. So we have to be focused on working to get things done and doing it in a way that we can collaborate and we can consolidate and partner our efforts so we can realize our potential.
So as we're wrapping up the panel discussion, I just wanted to give each panelist an opportunity for some final thoughts, whether that's your vision for the future or what the city will look like when the action plan is fully realized, or as basic as what's one thing you want this audience to take away from this discussion today. So we'll start with Mary Ellen.
I don't know if I can go with just one. I do want to pick up on one more theme, and that's this definition of economic development. It's a big term, and I've learned it means different things to different people. Usually with a Business Journal crowd, it means business attraction, the big game hunting, right? The luring of a new headquarters or a company from another city. And yes, it is that. But that is just one little piece of what economic development is. And that only works for you as a city if you do all of the other pieces of economic development well. And all of the other pieces are small business support, entrepreneurial ecosystem support. It's working well in community with community development. Community development and economic development are twins. They live together. You cannot have an economically prosperous city if you don't have a thriving community. It's all about people in place. Every economic development project, whether it starts with somebody's dream of owning a small business or it's luring the next headquarters to your city, has two truths: real estate and talent. Where is it going to be, and who's going to work there? How are we going to support the place that they're in, and how are we going to support the people who are founding it and the people who will work there? And so you have to think about all of those things together as a city. You have to think about your structures for business. You have to think about your structures for land use and quality of place and your talent development ecosystem. You're doing all of those here, and keep doing more of that. So to your question, though, about what are we each going to do. So look at this plan, go through it, whatever hour of day works for you, and then get in where you fit in. Dog-ear a page, highlight something, get in where you fit in. Accelerator for America is committed to St. Louis and to the SLDC. We're bringing resources here to help with some of the capital stacks, to help figure out how we can bring some additional capital into this plan and help invest in the city. So that's where we're going to get in.
Had to look at the pastor first. So, you know, I would ask that you walk away with the idea of this collective effort towards community building through investing in both people and places. Be bold, be courageous, understand that being creative and innovative is something that is called for in this moment, and don't be afraid to fail forward. It's a difference if we fail and we stand still or slide back versus failing forward. Sometimes you have to do that because we are trying something new. This is not something that's been done before, so all of us don't have the answers. Not any one of us has the answers. If we look at, again, collaborating, consolidating, and partnering, we can figure this out together, but we have to come alongside one another and do it in a collective effort.
Okay, here we go. So I think one of the things that we have to acknowledge is that none of us would be sitting here talking about the Economic Justice Action Plan if we hadn't elected Mayor Tashara O. Jones. And so as we look at our leadership within our region, you know, we're going to have to really start making some tough decisions about who we want where, and also who we hold accountable. Because it's not just citizen versus elected official or corporate versus local, or, you know, this is a gumbo thing, right? And we have to have the right people in place to make our communities safer. Like, crime is just not a city thing, it's not a county thing. We have regional problems, and we need the right leadership in place in order for our region to be successful. We're not competing just with a Detroit or Charlotte. We're competing with China, Australia. Like, this is a global competition. And so we have to really make sure that we're not leaving the most vulnerable behind. And when we do that, I feel like we will be successful as a community. And it won't be just a divide anymore. We'll actually be thriving as a community. And that's what I would like to see over this next 5 to 10 years, is that we're thriving as a whole community, and we're not talking about just the Central Corridor or Clayton. We're talking about East St. Louis. We're talking about Madison County. We're talking about the region thriving and being competitive, and that everyone is being lifted up in this moment.
I think I should have used my pastoral privilege and went first. But no, I stand in agreement with everything that's been said. I was having this conversation with one of our supporters, and we were talking about sustainability and fair market value. And I said two things to him. I said, one, as it's been mentioned here, this is a collective marathon, not a sprint. And so when we start looking at it that way, that gets into things of leadership, investment, and not only leaders of today, but who are we going to hand the baton to tomorrow? And what kind of position are we going to put them in so that we don't end up back here? I agree with Daphne. We wouldn't be having this conversation if it went for Mayor Jones. Mayor Jones has always said, let's look at this as a region. Let's look at this collectively. Now I think it's time for us as St. Louisans to look at it that way as well. The second thing I said to him in that conversation is, it costs what it costs. And he didn't like that, and he leaned in. I said, lean closer. I used pastoral privilege. I said, lean closer. I said, it costs what it costs because for 60 years, it's been costing us all these challenges and issues. And now it's up to us to make the investment so that, as sometimes we say in my world, for the person I may never meet, for the person I may never see, that they have a city and a place that they can call home and mean it, not a house where they stay. And so if we're going to do anything, we're going to have to be willing to collectively work together to pay the cost, because it costs what it costs. As my wife reminds me sometimes, certain things never go on sale. It just costs what it does. And if we want to see St. Louis be what the plan is, now it's going to cost us to do the work. So it's not just something on paper, but we can look back 5 to 10 years from now and see it being lived out.
Pastor Andre, I think you did just fine going last. One more round of applause, please, for our panel. And panel, if you would go ahead and remain on stage, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Neil for some closing remarks.
It's a surreal moment for me, honestly. Being born and raised in the city of St. Louis, growing up in North City, seeing the continuous decline throughout my entire lifetime, and understanding the challenges that we're up against. In this moment, though, I feel some hope. I feel some collective ownership into our future. And so I'm really excited about us having some intentionality around supporting North St. Louis City. Because when North St. Louis City thrives, the entire region benefits from that. And so as we think about next steps, as Mary Ellen stated and other panelists, is look through the action plan, reach out to SLDC. We are that conduit. That's the role that we play. We don't do anything too special other than connecting people and places to opportunity and connecting that opportunity to the people in the place. We are that gap filler. We're here to stand in that gap. So as you go back to your respective institutions, organizations, communities, think about how you can make an impact in driving this action plan forward. And when we come to the table collectively, you can leave your lapel pins at home, you can leave your logos at home, and let's have a real conversation around how do we influence policy and bring a new narrative and lens to how we invest, how we give, and how we transform the city in a more vibrant, just, and growing manner. And so I ask everyone to visit economicjusticestl.org, read through the roadmap, read through the action plan, contact SLDC, because we're actually convening partners today to be able to create a brighter future for tomorrow. So again, I thank everyone for waking up early, coming out and supporting us. And again, Mayor Jones could have been anywhere today. She has a lot of obligations. But because economic justice is a priority and an imperative for her and the vision for this city, I think we have to take a moment to realize and recognize that we all must do the same. Because this city can't be what it ought to be until we are who we ought to be. So we're here in this moment, again, to celebrate the Economic Justice Action Plan, but also begin to roll up our sleeves to do the work. So thank you again for your time.
Round of applause for Neil, or a standing ovation for Neil, and our panel. So I think one more round of applause for SLDC bringing this conversation to our community. You can You can read in the next couple weeks, I don't have the exact date, but you can read a wrap-up around this event in the St. Louis Business Journal. We're going to bring that conversation to our audience to teach them that economic development is more than just finding those big companies, right? But thank you all for joining us today. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And panel, we're going to try to get a group photo here, so if you can stay on stage. And then I've been told that the panelists might hang around to answer a few questions if you have them. So thanks again for joining us today.